fantastic. I think only one guy got grabbed. I didn't see the full circumstances of it, so I can't really speak as to that. But I think there's only been one person grabbed so far. Yeah, everything's been really fun. The route's not been too long. Like, I think the last big march where it went in all the way down, up and down past Westfields was maybe a little bit too long. But yeah, it's been I think a lot easier, and it's sort of succeeded. It shut down all the roads. But I think one of the things that's going to be interesting is whether this can transfer to the weekdays when the MPs are in Parliament, because if the MPs are in Parliament, then it's going to inconvenience them. And just like the Great Stink, right, led to where literally the Thames was so full of shit that and it was so hot that even the parliamentarians, even though they drenched all their curtains in lime, still had to smell the shit. When they got inconvenienced, then London got its sewer system. So too, I think that eventually when the people bring this on the weekdays, okay, with the Monday protests and maybe even rolling out through the week, that will be the point at which you might start to see some significant change. I think these big protests are obviously quite valuable to a huge amount of people, but I think it's about sort of taking it to the MPs. We put out a video this morning that I recorded yesterday from a stand outside your MP's office, down outside Keir Starmer's office. Even though they're not there, it's exposing them. It's essentially besieging them, because the people themselves are being besieged and put under, unlawful and unconstitutional house arrest. Yeah, well, our constitution is based on common law. Common law derives from our Anglo-Saxon ancestors came, settled this land, Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. If you want to go see the sort of vein of it, you can go read the Textus Recensus, which is a lot of the old Anglo-Saxon dooms. And you see, it's very much, okay, who have you harmed? Who have you harmed? And if you've harmed someone, then you have to make recompense for the crime that you've committed against them. It's very much restorative justice, and that's what essentially common law should be. But now everything is like, oh, well, the government's upset with you doing this. Okay, well, who have I hurt? Who's this man hurt? Who's that woman hurt? Who is the victim? If there's no victim, there's no crime. These things are fundamentally unconstitutional, and Parliament is just passing acts which it considers to be statute, but statute is subordinate to common law. I'm not saying all statute can be thrown out the window, but there are certain parameters. Like, Parliament can't legislate tomorrow to say that people can only leave their house if they hop on one leg. Like, they can't do that. It's unreasonable. It's unacceptable. They don't have the authority to do that. They can't legislate to just abolish juries. We have the right to justice. These are our fundamental rights. They don't have the right to take away. They don't have the right to take away our free speech. They don't have the right to take away our right to bear arms. They don't have the right to take away our right to assembly. They are fundamentally criminals, and these things are recognised because we had multiple revolutions. Our revolution was in 1215, around 500 years before the French had their revolution. So the French, oh yes, we are so revolutionary. Well, we beat you by 5 centuries, you lazy French. Yeah. Cheese-eating surrounding the monkeys. So yeah, we are a very revolutionary people, but unfortunately it seems like we're losing that spirit. It needs to be reasserted. The Magna Carta recognised, it did not give the rights, it just recognised the rights in perpetuity. And I don't know, maybe all of these judges and these parliamentarians, they can't read English. Maybe they need a dictionary to understand the words perpetuity and forever, because that is the law. And they think that, oh, because something's a bit old, well then we can just get rid of it. Well, they're all a bit old, aren't they? So shall we just get rid of them? You know, they charge people with antiquated offences. Like, for example, the Offences Against a Person Act, that's from the 1800s. Oh, should we just get rid of that? Should we just get rid of all of this stuff just because it's old? No, this stuff has existed for so long because it works, because it's fundamentally everyone's right. So, thank you. Because those are our rights. And the fact that our ancestors went through world wars for this country, and this country thinks, or the state thinks, that it can go around and say, oh yeah, we'll take your blood, we'll take your sweat, we'll take your tears, but then we don't owe you anything, well, they can piss off. And these are criminals. The law is clear. We have the Magna Carta in perpetuity. We have the Bill of Rights forever. Right? These things cannot be revoked, and all of their so-called legal arguments are just based on some idiot called A.V. Dicey from essentially like the sort of turn of the century or late Victorian age, around then. And it's just a fad. It's all a modern fad that's only been around, there's only really been popular for about 100 years. It's a fad, okay? All of the great legal scholars, for the majority, or most of the great legal scholars for the last, you know, most of our entire English history have recognised people with basic rights. And the idea that these criminals can just go, nah, I'll take them away. Well, they can get stuffed. You know, we have natural rights. I think there's been a huge problem with the phrasing of these human rights. Well, firstly, they don't include animals, right? Because natural rights can include animals. And then the idea that your rights come from basic deduction. They're like, oh, well, you know, he's speaking, he's not harming anyone. Basic deduction, like John Stuart Mill lays this out in On Liberty. It's from nature, it's from science, it's from empiricism. You know, it's from just thinking. You know, and maybe we should pay credit to Aristotle for inventing logic. But I think as human beings have always had logic, and the idea that you're going to get rid of common law is common sense. You know, if you harm someone, you should be punished proportionately to the degree of harm that you cause that person. Done. That's the law. That's justice. Nothing more, nothing less. And everyone has a right to justice. And what they do is they basically price everyone out of the market by overcomplicating everything. Well, it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. What they do is they create barriers to entry in the market. Like, you know, if you like even look at basic economics, right? Like Austrian school, of course, which is actually economics, rather than Keynes, which is just, you know, pseudoscience. Like, you'll see, like, they are just cutting off access for the working class, for the poor, for just general people who haven't thought about all of this. Whereas they themselves, well, they can afford fancy lawyers. They can afford to go after everyone else because they've got money behind them, because they've got the prestige, and all the courts are corrupt. The judges just go with, oh, who seems the most, you know, well-heeled person? Oh, well, the government has said this, so we have to follow it. No, the whole point of the courts is that the courts are independent of the government. And you've got the police who say, oh, well, you know, we have to, we are impartial, we just enforce the law. And I'm like, how do you enforce the law? According to the government's interpretation. Well, that's not independent, is it? Basic fucking logic. Basic. No. It's just an absolute fucking disgrace. Like, we have put monarchs to death for far less than what Elizabeth Windsor has done. She is the worst monarch in the history of England. The worst monarch. Like, my ancestors, my great-grandfather used to look after her father, okay, after her uncle, but she's an absolute disgrace. Like, every single unconstitutional ultra vires act has her signature on it. It's got her signature. She is the most complicit person in this country. She is meant to be a check and balance. She has the powers to say no. She has the powers to dismiss the government and call a general election. She doesn't do it. She doesn't care. She doesn't give a toss. She cares about preserving this facade of a monarchy. The point of a monarchy is to actually protect the people. Okay, they have a job to uphold our constitution. And she is, everyone says, oh, she has no power. No, she just can't be fucked to use it. She is a fucking traitor. She has committed treason, as kings have done in the past, and she should be deposed. She's no queen of mine, and I owe her no loyalty, because she doesn't do her duty that she's meant to be doing. What am I getting? We're paying for our palaces and whatnot. And they go, oh, she's great for tourism. Where's the fucking tourism? Well, she killed that via all of the fucking bills that she signed. So what exactly are we getting? Like she's completely betrayed everyone. It's her job to say no. And why does the monarch meet with the Prime Minister every week to discuss everything and have a conversation? If something goes too far, then they have to say politely behind closed doors. So it's not a big public argy-bargy. They just say, look, I can't put my signature on that. And that shouldn't have to happen very often. But what she's been doing this her whole life. She wants to go round cutting ribbons and opening hospitals and smashing champagne against ships, and that's not her fucking job. Her job is to uphold the Constitution, full stop. That is the law, that is our history, and you know, people have completely forgotten that, so they need to wake the fuck up. And I cannot detest that woman more. Like, the penalty for treason is death. Very simple. Like, my family serves her family, and what do we get? House arrest? Violently assaulted? Nah. It's like, oh, but she's my queen. It's like, what was that? Like the crappy last series of Game of Thrones. She's my queen. She's my queen. Right? It's like, you know nothing if you're gonna be saying, oh, she's my queen. Well, how about we get a new queen or king who will do their fucking job? Look, none of them have been in the position of power, but they just, like, nearly all of them seem hopeless. The only one who seems like she's got any credibility whatsoever is Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. So if a compromise had to be made, then she would need to be put on the throne, because she's the only one who I think might, I'm saying might, I'm not saying is, yeah, that was I'm saying might be a person who you can negotiate with. And like, most of you won't have heard of Princess Anne. Why? Because she puts her head down and does a fucking job and doesn't open her mouth. So, hardest working royal, most engagement. So if we need to reach a compromise, install a new monarch on the throne, just as we've done before, plenty of times in history, right? Look at the Glorious Revolution. Kicked out James II, installed William and Mary, and then after that, Queen Anne. Done, simple. Why can't we have Queen Anne II? Should work pretty fine. If and only if she's willing to recognise that we have fundamental rights to life, liberty and property. And all of these vexatious, diktats, saying that, for example, that people can't leave their homes, that they can't see their friends, that they don't have the right to earn money, put food on their table, to support their families, to grow or own a plant. Oh, because property has got to own something. It's a crime. To own a weapon so you can defend your family. Oh, you dirty criminal. Fuck off. Fuck off. Who the fuck are these? These are fucking psychopaths who are hoarding weapons, who are spying on everyone, but don't like a camera being put in their face.
Anti-lockdown, it means freedom. Simply, like, less government restricting life, less government interference in life, and just more of you being free and all of your rights being more and more open. I think it's success in the sense that every time I go to an anti-lockdown / freedom movement, whatever you want to call it, it grows and grows and grows and grows. You have to understand, I was there the very first anti-lockdown movement, as well as Will, David Curtin, Piers Corbyn, Jeff Wyatt, Fiona Diamond, Ramesh, all these people. We didn't know who each other were at the time. And now that for about, I call it the original 100 people, and now from 100 people, it's pretty much blossomed into, I mean, I can't even count how many people are here today, but I reckon at least 1 million people. I mean, it's just massive. I mean, like, I thought I was at the end of the march, because I was hanging around. I don't know if you saw, there was a rave lorry, and I was a bit too long at that rave lorry. There was a lorry that was our DJ set inside the lorry, and then, like, and there was what was going on in between Piccadilly Circus and Oxford Street, and I was there for a full-on hour. So a full-on hour, and I get to Trafalgar Square thinking, oh, it's just a remnant. Then I look down Whitehall and it's absolutely packed, it's stuffed. And there were the remnants. So how many people are actually here, I couldn't even tell you. But I'm just going to say, just to save time, it's 1 million people. I mean, it's got to be. Apparently the Met Police were expecting 1,100,000 people to actually turn up here today. So I'm just going by 1 million. I'm being quite modest and conservative by saying 1 million people. So it always grows, and that's the reason why the state, the establishment, whatever you want to call them, they fear us the most, because we are now bigger. We're the most biggest movement in the entire UK. We're bigger than Black Lives Matter, we're bigger than Extinction Rebellion, we're bigger than the feminist movement, Israel, Palestine. All of those things are simply divide movements to, yeah man, see that? Stop the experiments, yeah, definitely, totally agree with that. But like, those 5 things are used to divide people, and we're seeing through that, and that's why the state fear us the most, and the police are more harsh to them. I mean, you see Extinction Rebellion, they turn up with hammers, smashing windows, and the police and the mainstream media accommodate them. Whereas us, where's the mainstream media? They don't want the sleeping person at home still caring about materialistic sort of bollocks that no one cares about really in the greater scheme of things. They're trying to trick them and go, oh, only 100 people turned up. You know what I mean? Or only 1,000 people turned up. They don't know. They fear us the most, and that's how you know that we're winning. People like Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, the mainstream media are always there to accommodate them. That's how you know. How are they rebels then? They're manufactured rebels. They aren't the real rebels. So that's the reason why I say just don't. All of those people that are in those movements, Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion, feminist stuff, Israel, Palestine, they're being manipulated and they don't realise it. So that's the reason why. So yes, so to answer your question a long way around, yes, this is a success thing that keeps going and going and going. But I want to see more weekday things, because I mean, it's all good passing by Downing Street in Parliament, but essentially we're waving at empty buildings, because most of those civil servants, MPs, lords, they're all at home, yeah, right? Weekday stuff is the next thing we need to do. Also stand outside of your MP's office if he or she has voted for more authoritarian restrictions, and also sort of stuff like love down as well, other expressions of, you know, stuff I can't even think of, you know, like things that you think is a good idea. So any of that sort of stuff, just try anything and see what works. So yeah, but definitely I think it's success. It always keeps growing, it always keeps more people keep coming along. Adding you, I don't know. I can't really say what I would say. Simply go into more residential areas rather than the same old areas in central London, like Oxford Street, you know, Downing Street, Whitehall, all of these places. No one actually lives in those places. City of London, only 5,000 people live in City of London, and most of those people are usually top sort of elitist sort of people. So you're not really going to change anything. Go into places like Clapham Common, places like, not Clapham Common, but Clapham, I mean, Brixton, Peckham, you know, where people actually live. Go to those areas rather than the same old places. I mean, it's good I mean, it's always a good laugh going through Oxford Street and Oxford Circus or whatever, and getting a few shoppers, but they're only there, and you're only converting about 1,000 people max. You need to go into the residential areas like last time we passed by Shepherd's Bush and get people waking up that way, and then you see, wow, these guys are actually fun. They got all this music, they got all this, they're actually a good laugh. Wow, they're not crazy people, and actually waking people that way. Trust me, people are bored nowadays. They want to see new things. So definitely go into residential areas rather than going into the same old sort of crappy areas that no one really lives in, or it's sort of elitist sort of like toffs where they're pretty much like in hand doing this sort of stuff, this authoritarian measures in the first place.
Just to add to that, this protest is not like other protests. We're not asking the government to do something. We're protesting for the people, trying to raise awareness. All the other protests are like, government, we need to do this, do this. So we go to government buildings. But now because the government is the enemy, because the government is the ones that work against us, we're already doing it for the people.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why the state always accommodates. When I say the state, that includes the police and the mainstream media. That's why they always accommodate for things like Extinction Rebellion, Black Lives Matter, the feminist stuff, because they're always asking government to pass laws, and every time a law is passed, your civil liberties get smaller, and it makes the state bigger. So it's always a balancing act of those two things. Whereas we, i.e. the freedom movement, anti-lockdown movement, whatever you want to call it, we're saying that no, we want less state, we want less laws, we want more freedom, and the state hates that. The state hates that. This is essentially a libertarian movement, and most people don't know what libertarianism is, because obviously, keep it in mind, the state controls the education system, and it's the state's invested interest to make you not know about philosophy, i.e. libertarianism, that basically says don't trust the state, have less state involved in education and healthcare and various other sectors of industry. That's the reason why the state hates us the most. This is essentially a liberty movement, but most people don't understand that because they've never been taught about libertarianism. So there you go.